Good morning. Are you balancing a full-time job and dreaming of starting your own side hustle? Or maybe you're already juggling both? Well, in this video today, I'm so excited. My guest, LINDSEY HANSON, she shares with us just these real-life strategies on how to thrive in both of these worlds. Now, I'm Gale Bates. I really want to welcome you to my series where I interview entrepreneurs from around the globe who work from home. And with over 20 years of experience as a home-based entrepreneur myself, I know firsthand the challenges of staying organized, managing time, and avoiding that overwhelm in today's fast-paced world. Every entrepreneur I interview has a unique story to share. Each one of them are full of insights on productivity and time management. So if you are eager to learn from those who actually make it happen, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that bell to never miss an episode. Now, I'm really excited today. As you can see, I'm all hyped up with my tea and everything. I really am excited for you to learn from LINDSEY HANSON because she is a high corporate professional and runs a very successful online business and podcast. And you will learn her practical tips on turning your passion into profit without burning out, right? And you're going to see how passionate LINDSEY is in showing you ways to just stop overwhelming your tracks. And she has ways to help you focus on what really matters most. And she says, transforming confusion into structured progress that enriches you both personally and professionally. I loved it. Let's dig in, and don't forget to get out your pen and paper because I think you definitely want to take some notes on this one. Well, hey, LINDSEY, so wonderful to have you here today. And I know you're going to have some great tips to share with my audience who are entrepreneurs working from home. And you have things a little bit differently because your entrepreneurial journey is having a side hustle. You work a full-time job. So what you're going to share with us today is going to be really interesting. So I'm wondering, do you have a daily routine? How do you fit your side hustle into you? Do you work 40 hours a week in your real job?
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here on your show. And, I know interviewing you on my podcast, Productivity with Peace of Mind, was just an absolute blessing. And, you shared so much wisdom. So it's just a blessing. I just want to share that to connect with you.
Well, back at you, girl.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful journey. And I think mine is a little bit unique because having kind of, a few toes in the entrepreneurial space right now and also working a full-time corporate career, a lot of people have a focus around, leaving corporate or stepping away from corporate to fully be an entrepreneur. And while I have done that in the past, for me right now, I have such a beautiful balance between a career that challenges me, exposes me to incredible leaders that I get to learn from and work side by side with every day. And then turn around and go coach our teams with that and coach our other leaders. And so it's a beautiful growth opportunity for me to still have that and still be in that space while at the same time expressing myself and being able to spend time, so my full-time career was like 40, 50 hours a week, depending on the week. And then I'll spend, it really kind of varies, but I have a monthly membership that I run, and everything I do in my business, I do it to scale so that it's the least amount of time for the most output. And because I have that limited time, and I think that that's a skill that everyone could apply, whether you're still in corporate or have another career or job or not, because it helps you go further, right? So what I do is in my membership, everybody comes in and gets the same content. So that's like, same amount of time for me, no matter how many people sign up. And then it gets recorded and added to a membership site so that they have kind of that bank of classes and content that we've gone through, and it's already done. I don't have to repeat it. It's already there. If someone wants to go through, their ideal week or planning intentionally for our holidays, it's all there. So they have access, and I'm not having to, do the one-to-one coaching, which initially I kind of thought maybe I would, build that in. But as I got to know myself and went through my own health journey this year, I realized that actually wasn't possible because while I do spend some early mornings and some evening time and some weekend time on my business,
Yeah.
I don't want to consistently do that one-on-one, especially after a day of like meetings or travel. And I know, like, as I pay attention to my energy, I know how much it expends. And I recognize that that wasn't for me. So it's really about like being intentional about how you spend that time. What are you building and why? How can you maximize your output of what you're doing? Like my podcast, for example, I spent a lot of time before I even launched recording content and planning and making it really, beautiful and spacious. And I somehow have episodes through next year of June. It's amazing. And
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And so, how do you fit all of that in? Do you and you have specific systems that you use?
yeah. So I build systems for everything I do because I don't want to like recreate the wheel every week, every month, right? So like for my, membership, for example, I have the content, I have the email sequence, I have it all there. So each time I'm creating new content, I'm taking the same template. I'm taking I have a PowerPoint that I share, like a presentation with the content. I've got notes. I have a full workbook that I give them every month, and that's all templated out. So, and then I also have a spreadsheet of ideas. So as I think of more topics, it's just totally being filled up. And then each month I can go ahead, pre-populate that in, build the PowerPoint, build the workbook, plug that right into the email sequence, and it goes out seamlessly without even, me having to think about it once it's done. It's a very set it and forget it.
Wow.
That's same amazing. For the podcast. It's very similar of like, I have the application form that they fill out that gathers everything I need throughout the whole process up front. And then we have the call, we plan it, we have the content. And then at that planning call, we also book the interview, right? So it's like everything has a little bit of a step that just kind of builds upon itself. And
yeah, I know I was impressed when I did your interview. I went through that process. So that was very impressive because, as I said, you've got these systems built in, which is really amazing. And so do you think that you spend every day working on your business in the morning, in the evening, or do you have, some boundaries for yourself?
Yeah, great question. So the boundaries I set with myself is building in buffers. And like my students of my membership and the listeners of my podcast know I am a huge, huge advocate of buffers and spaciousness and like building those in because if I don't, I will burn out. I will get too tired or I will start feeling sick or I'll be in a lot of pain and then I can't do anything. And then I become kind of useless to myself or I'm going to do something in a manner that's not showing up as my best self, right? So it really helps to build in those spaciousness. So let's say I have a week where I'm traveling for my corporate career. I will have everything scheduled out, done, set, ready to go so that I'm not even touching my business that week. I can breathe. It's spacious. I build in, I walk every day. So if I'm, doing for example, a few weeks ago, I did a 2-hour presentation on HR 101 for our general managers of our stores. And after that, I had space to go for a walk, go get a salad, go back to the hotel, relax, like having those spaces built in is really how I manage it. So it really varies, Gale, because it changes, different meetings come up, different travel, different things, but I very much will batch and then plan for the future so that everything is really broken apart. So I'm not overexpending and I can keep giving in a way that's useful for everybody else and feels good for me.
That's brilliant. I mean, I think for the audience that's watching today, this advice on setting barriers or little buffers in between, giving yourself that spaciousness is the key because you're leading a very busy life and you don't want to burn out, right? That's definitely, no, I love it. I love it. So You have the corporate job. How do you work your business at home? Do you have a special workspace set up, or do you have a special office? How does that work for you?
I do. So for my brain and my energy, I get very stagnant if I'm in the same space. So like in my living room, I have this, beautiful space with like, nice couch and pillows and artwork. And this is where I record and take meetings a lot of the times, whether it's, during the day, during a weekday for my corporate job, or in the evenings, mornings, et cetera, for my business. But I also really like, I have like a big spacious kitchen with like a huge kitchen island. So if I feel so called, I'll go sit out there, or I'll go sit on my balcony that overlooks the mountains, or
I
coffee shop, or right, like you kind of find these spaces to, inspire you, and that kind of get the body moving too, and like the blood flowing. Because if I'm just sitting in one space, I get stuck, I get tired, my energy starts to drain.
yeah. No, I think it's important that we work out what is best for our energy,
Yes.
how we manage our own energy. And I think you have really described that well for us. So, as an entrepreneur who has this wonderful side hustle, and you're so goal oriented, and you teach that as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a bit about the process that you use to set a goal, follow, and track the goal, and do you do short-term goals or long-term goals, or both? How does that work for you?
Oh yeah, I'm such an advocate of goal setting. So, of course, I have my annual session with myself.
Right.
And for many years I did it alone. Actually, this year was the first year that I did it with a group of friends. And we had this beautiful space where like I facilitated it, but I also did it myself. And so I think we spent maybe like 3 or 4 hours together, and it was just such a great space. And I brought some of my friends from my inner circle in, because I thought, what a beautiful way to do this planning together, but then also have some conversation on like, what are our obstacles? What are we, up against? What are some of the things like in our head we're stuck on, that someone from the outside that we trust in our circle can say, hey, have you considered this, or have you considered that? So it was a beautiful space. And I would say I highly recommend that. Like doing that as a group with those you trust was really a cool expansion of my own process. But what I do is I reflect on the year before.
Yeah.
I want to understand within myself, like, what did I learn that I want to remember, right? Like, what do I want to take with me? What are the amazing things that happened? Like, A, you can just feel gratitude for, or B, take with you to keep learning and keep working on and building upon, and remembering for the work that you continue to do. What maybe didn't go so well, right?
Right.
Sometimes there's things where, it's like,
Lessons learned, aren't they?
yeah. Like what do I not want to do anymore? What do
Yeah.
I want to let go of, and maybe learn from in an opportunity perspective of like, yeah, that thing didn't go so well, and here's what I want to take with me going forward, and here's the intention I want to set going forward. So there's a lot of reflection, and it's there's a lot more detail that goes into it, but it's essentially this very deep reflection on all of those things. Like, who did you learn from, right? Like, who are your biggest inspirations, and what did they teach you, and like all kinds of things like that. And then it's forward looking. So like, okay, what is my big North Star vision? So like looking way ahead, like, I mean, some people might call it like 10-year goal. I call it like your big daring goals. Like, if anything were possible, what would that be? Like, not putting a timeline on it, not putting any logistics around it, just like, magic ball thinking of like, okay, like if I had a magic wand, what would those big, huge goals be?
Yeah.
And you dare big, because I think that's the first step to then, set those goals and work backwards, right?
Right. Exactly.
So we'll look at like 5-year goals. Like what would be great in 5 years? We look at 3 years, we look at 1 year, and then we start to get really tactical. So that's when I like break down that year. Like, okay, all right, I've got those other goals. Like, we're kind of tabling that, right? But then what do I want to accomplish within 1 year that works toward that bigger vision, that allows me to step into being that person that lives that life of that greater, bigger vision. So
Mhm.
it's this whole process. I mean, this takes like hours. It's probably overkill, but then you break it down
Yeah.
into, monthly and like deadlines of like, okay, what are the tangible deliverables that I'm going to provide for myself, for my business, for my career, for my relationship, for my health, like whatever the categories are. So, we break down these different categories of our life and how we feel about them and what goals can come out of those and simplify it down to make it really actionable and easy. And then the most important thing is getting it on the calendar, because if we don't, a lot of times it doesn't happen.
No, no, I love it that you are spending that time going through that whole process, and I think right now is the time to be doing that. It is October. We're into
Yeah.
transitioning from one year to the next. So yeah, I think that's great, and I think a lot of people will love that. So you are out there because you've got a full-time job. You're conversing with people every day. How do you stay connected with people on your side hustle in your business? What are there specific ways that you stay connected? And I know you have your podcast, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get towards the end here. Are there any other ways that you connect with people and have conversations about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a local entrepreneur group that we just started ourselves. Like nobody's paying anybody. It's just like kind of a personal inner circle for business and life and health and like the whole holistic picture. We call ourselves the growth group. It's just something, totally for fun that we do here in Colorado. There's about maybe, I don't know, there's a good handful of us. It ebbs and flows of like how many show up per live get together, but we have a WhatsApp chat with about 10 or so people.
Right.
And then once a month on a Sunday, we meet for 2 hours for coffee. And we go over, each person kind of shares like, what are you working on? What's going well? Like what kind of obstacles are you facing? How can we support you? What do you need from us? And sometimes like, it'll be like, we have, someone who works in the health field, and we're talking about like physical spaces. Like, I need a space for this because the space I'm in doesn't work, right? So there's examples like that. But then sometimes you show up and you're like, I don't have the energy to work on my business right now because my health is draining all my energy, and I'm working on that. And then we'll share resources on like energy work and health. So it's a very holistic way, but it also builds that connection of like, I have a circle I can rely on and I can trust. And by the way, I recently went through a procedure just a few days ago, and two of the women from that group were like, what do you need? We'll come to your house. Like one of the girls literally can't, like my boyfriend's out of town. And so I'm like, all loopy on medication and anesthesia, still in my system. And she literally came over and like cooked for me. So like having that circle that you can rely on, that you can take care of each other, that supports your business and your goals, but also your well-being. Because if we don't take care of our well-being and our health, we don't have a business, right? We don't have a career. We don't have any of those things that we're working on because we'll become completely depleted.
So it is important as entrepreneurs who work from home, who have our own businesses, where we make all our own decisions, right?
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are doing that. And having somebody like an inner circle to really bounce things off, I think is wonderful. And it sounds like your group is really fantastic. So, and very supportive.
Yes.
I'm going to move you, productivity queen. I'm going to move you to sharing with us. Tell us some of the productivity hacks that you use in your business that help you really work through your business, as well as any tech tools that go along with that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier I kind of alluded to one of them, which is like creating things that are scalable, like maximizing the output of what you're doing, of instead of numerous one-to-one sessions, having one once a month 90-minute call where everyone can show up. I can pour into them with the content and then open up for Q&A. And it's a great way to also just encourage all that conversation. So that's a big one, like scaling in any way that you can, pouring, like duplicating what you're doing. Yeah. Also, batching is a really big one for me. Like if I need to do one thing, so I talked about my processes. Like I have all these systems and processes for each step of my business. And one of them is my podcast. And so I do edit my own podcast right now. It's new. I just launched a few months ago. And so when I'm editing, I go through and I'm just editing the content and then I put the file away. So I'll edit like, maybe 5 episodes, let's say, in a week, right? Because I have them recorded out through next June. So I have quite a lot. And so like yours, I just edited recently and it was so beautiful and I've got it in my queue and I'm so excited. But I'll do that, right? My focus is just editing and I get that kind of pushed out into the queue so that it's really far. And then when it's time to write the social posts and the emails, I'll go and do all of that, like all of the content writing. I do that all at once so that it's just done for myself. And it's such a good way to take care of your future self, because then when it comes time, I'm like, oh, it's done, it's ready. So the batching piece for me is really huge. And I would say another final piece that's just so critical and probably the most important is being intentional about what we're doing and why, right? So what are the things we're doing that are wasting our time?
Right.
And I'm not just talking about social media, Netflix, and those things. I'm talking about worry. Yeah. I'm talking about spinning out in indecision and confusion, right? Like all of these emotions that convince us that we're being productive when we're not, like recognizing that and being aware of what's happening in our brain and why. Like, am I spending all day like rocking back and forth, getting nowhere? Or am I being really intentional about how I spend my time, right? And there's time for Netflix. Sometimes you just want an evening with, maybe a glass of wine and you want to watch Inside Out 2, which I love that movie. I love the Inside Out movies.
But you're so right. It's I call it busy work.
Yes.
And sometimes we spend too much time on the busy work.
Yes.
Not getting us anywhere. We're just running in place, right?
Yes.
So being aware of that is what you're saying. And
yes.
It's so important. I'm glad we had that conversation about that, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about that. I think you can get yourself into that busy work and go down that rabbit hole basically before you know it, right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to move you into, well, it's kind of shifting. It's the same thing. Talk a little bit about professional development.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, you have a really busy life. You work a full-time job. You have a life. You have a business, a side hustle that's very successful. So what do you do to, make sure you keep on top of everything as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So every year I will make one decision for one big investment in my own learning. And a lot of times that's like a mastermind or a program that I'm investing in for the year. That's a little bit higher ticket item. That's been anywhere from years ago, it might've been, okay, I'm going to spend, maybe I'm thinking like early 20s, like I'll spend like $260 for the year. And that was my big investment. This year I spent $3,000. So it grows with me, and it doesn't have to be a huge investment, but it's finding your thing. And it could even be free. It could be like, this is the podcast I'm going to listen to every week, right? Like deciding what your investment in yourself will be, not just financially, but with your time and learning. And you can find those overlaps. So there's time where you're doing something that doesn't require your mind. It might require your body. Like, let's say you're doing the dishes or you're doing the laundry or you're driving. That's where you plug in at maybe a module from a course or a podcast or something that's allowing you to continue to learn. And the other piece is making sure that you're tapping into leaders and or executives or whoever has gone before you, and having those mentors intentionally to learn from them and kind of, not like, dive into their brain and like take everything they have, but like asking the questions, like also, showing up for them and like, what can I do for you? I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to help you. Right. Like, so finding the people, in my corporate career, I find executives and I go support their projects, right? Like I find new ways to expand my own brain and keep learning that overlaps with what I'm already doing. And in my business, I find entrepreneurs who are part of my network and they've been in business far longer than I have, and they're very successful and doing very well. And we'll meet for coffee or we'll hop on a Zoom and have a, virtual chat and connection, and just kind of tapping into like, what's going well for you? How's your journey going? And people love that. Like they love to like have the opportunity to like share that with you and share what worked for them. And so being able to tap into that really helps me as well.
I think that's great advice. I think, I agree with you. If you can find a program that you can afford that is within your budget.
Yeah.
And it really is something that you're going to learn from.
Yep.
Sometimes I do that myself. But then again, you don't have to spend a lot of money.
Yes.
And tap into other resources that are available. And as you said, just having coffee with someone who is going to offer you some advice because you're learning about their entrepreneurial journey is really important. I think learning is the key, and making sure you're plugging that in, right? You're plugging to your everyday work as we work our business as entrepreneurs, right?
Yes. Yes.
Do you have any particular tech apps or things that you work with that are any different from anybody else?
Yeah, serving which purpose would you say, or just anything?
Anything, as just the purpose is as an entrepreneur working from home and how it helps you with your business, how it helps you be organized, maybe something that you work with that keeps you organized, or something that you work with that you can plug into. Is there any kind of apps or tech tools that you could offer?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say there's probably three main ones. The first one is Asana. So when you talk about organization, project management, like ideation, right? Like brainstorming, I have a process in Asana, and actually I have an episode coming out on my podcast. I think later this year or early next year. I can't exactly remember where it is in the queue off the top of my head, but I build out my projects in there. And that helps me, I put everything in my calendar, and that's really where I operate. But Asana is kind of my ideation, brainstorming, like master list home. And that's where everything lives. And I've got my queue of newsletters. I've got my queue, and, the app's on my phone, it's on my computer. So if I'm, sitting in a coffee shop and I'm like, oh, I just thought of an idea for a newsletter. That was a cute thing that, man, like drop that thing, somebody dropped something and some grab from whatever, like you see something cute. I will literally open up the app and drop that idea in there, and it's ready to go, so that when I'm in creation mode and I'm batching, it's all there. And I'm like, oh, idea. I never have to sit down and be like, what should I write about? It's all batched out as a list. The other piece is a software called New Zenler. They've been around for maybe, gosh, they're new, but they're not like brand new. I think they've maybe been over like 5 or 6 years or so, or maybe a little bit more. And it's an all-in-one software that provides courses, live, if you want to do like a live webinar, or you want to, so I have my course, I have my membership, I have my community area. They do offer email that you can, like, there's a little bit of an ESP in there, but I do use Kit, which was formerly known as ConvertKit. So that's kind of like, you can do more, but I like the formatting of Kit better.
Yeah.
So I use that. And then the other place is, this is not like unique, but Google Drive is really big for me and keeping me organized with my content, my own learning. So like my own professional development, like what my resources, my freebies that I'm gathering, keeping that in a really intentional space so that I know where to refer back to. Like if I have a freebie or a online course I've purchased and it's on copywriting and I'm working on copy, I can easily jump over and grab the resource I need to then work on it and store all the content for my social, my podcast, all of that.
The Google Drive is really good for that. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Great. I'm sure those few tips are going to really help people because everybody does it differently. And that's why I like to ask that question.
Yeah.
You know, you might say one little thing that really sparks an idea for somebody who's watching today. And I think that's why it's important to talk about it.
Love it.
Okay. So, you know, in your life as as a busy professional with a corporate career, what are your secrets to maintaining that life balance? Okay.
Yeah, work-life balance. It's an interesting concept, and I don't necessarily prescribe to the idea of balance in the sense of being like perfectly, separated or 50-50, right? I think life and business and health and mindset and all of these things in our personal lives, they're kind of like a teeter-totter, right? Like sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. I actually teach a concept in one of my courses that's being built. It's a one-to-one program that I was offering previously that will be built out into a course again that's scaling and minimizing efforts for maximum output. But in that course, I talk about tending our gardens. And so understanding that like you have maybe a relationship garden, and maybe if you have children, there's a garden for your children. There's a garden for your business and your career and your health, and like, right, all of your priorities in your life are I think of them as gardens. So understanding sometimes one garden is doing great and another one has an infestation. And you've got to let the garden that's doing okay sit for a minute on its own so that you can really roll up your sleeves, put on the gloves and dig into the dirt, like tie your hair back and get in there to really focus on that and be intentional about, what you're focusing on. So for me, it's a continual harmonizing of what that priority is. And like the first half of this year, my priority was launching this business. And my 3 big goals were launch a podcast, launch an offering of some sort, and then, test that out and continue it and see how it goes. And then write my book. And those 3 are done. And it's amazing. So I cranked that out. Of course, things are still progressing and evolving. And my book is in the editing phase and the rewrite phase. But the bulk of that is done. And then, of course, as the world has it, as the universe and, as it lays out, has it, health things came up for me. So then my priority became that. And I really dug into my health garden and invested a lot into my own care and, learning about slowing down and things like that. So for me, it's just a continual harmonizing and reprioritizing of where my energy needs to go so that I'm not focusing on the gardens that are doing okay when another garden really needs my help and my attention.
It's such a beautiful analogy, the garden analogy. I just love that. And I think everybody can really relate to that as well, because, as we are entrepreneurs who make all these decisions on our own, we have all these facets of the business, but we also have the facets of our life. And we have to really make sure that each one is tended to like a garden, as you say, right? Yeah. Last question for you before we get into sharing more information about your podcast and everything else is, if you could offer one helpful piece of advice, or maybe just a lesson that you've learned to fellow entrepreneurs working from home, what would it be?
I think the most important thing is to listen within. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important to really slow down. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this in my corporate career and I talk about it in my business. We must slow down in order to speed up. A lot of us just want to go super fast and we want to get to that end goal. Like we think of a goal, like we were talking about goal setting earlier, and we're like, I just want to be here. I don't want to do the whole thing together. I just want to get the goal, right? I want the result. And that's something I've struggled with. But if we slow down and we take a breath, right? Get really intentional. A lot of times we can eliminate waste of time and energy that's unnecessary. Because if we have an idea and we just like bulldoze toward it, we're often going to make mistakes, go the wrong way. And I mean, listen, we're still going to make mistakes and go the wrong way at times, but the more intentional we can be, the less it's going to just extend all of our energy.
I think that's just such great advice for entrepreneurs who work from home. It's so important. And I think you've hit the nail on the head here. So now tell us about your podcast. Tell us about how people can reach you. Tell us a little bit about what resources you offer. What's the name of your podcast?
Absolutely. My podcast is called Productivity with Peace of Mind. And those are two pieces that are really important, because the productivity piece for me is not about just cranking things out, right? Like, it's not this like harsh, aggressive, like burning out amount of energy, right? It's about doing what's really meaningful and getting those things that matter the most to us across the finish line without the overwhelm, without the burnout. And that's where the peace of mind part of it comes in. It's productivity with peace of mind. Yeah. Because if we're not at peace within ourselves, I mean, listen, at peace can mean different things to different people. Some people at peace is like, I'm going to stay in my safety zone and I'm not going to take any risks. Other people, like for me, peace is knowing that I'm growing, that I'm challenging myself, but I'm not burning myself out, right? So understanding what that means for you. But the peace of mind part is so important. And it becomes more and more important as I go on my health journey, because if we don't take care of ourselves, none of this matters. If we don't feel good doing it, if we don't feel like this is my own definition of success, why are we even doing it? You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to chase dreams of other people or the media or what someone else told us that we're supposed to do. So super passionate about it. And I bring on beautiful guests like yourself, Gale, and others. And it's a very holistic approach. I bring in leaders who are brand new to their careers. I bring in longtime experienced leaders. I bring in entrepreneurs, doctors, like all these people who can bring this holistic picture to us on how we can take care of ourselves and still have those meaningful things and those meaningful goals and achievements for whatever success means for us.
Great. Wonderful. Well, we will be putting the link to your podcast in the description below. Okay. And your website as well, right? And any free resources that you offer?
Yes, I have a worksheet. It's called the Find Your Focus worksheet. And what this does, it's kind of a two-step process. It's 2 pages. And we can, drop the link in the notes for that as well. But it helps you zoom out and really look at all of your goals, all of your dreams, right? And then helps you like hone in on what am I truly willing to do? You break that down and make sure, and then make that commitment to yourself. And then you zoom in and start to look at what are the next steps? How can I reverse engineer all of those steps it takes? And then we get started, right? What are the next 3 things you're going to go do right now to get started? Because action begets action, and it just creates that momentum for us. So it's a beautiful worksheet that helps us, and you can grab that free resource as well. So we'll link that below.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much. Your take on a lot of what we talked about is a little different, because you are a corporate professional as well as having a very successful home-based business as well. And I think for some of the audience out there who might have been thinking that they want to start a side hustle, I think you've given them some great tips. And I hope they go and check you out and listen to your podcast so they really get more tips on what it means. So I want to thank you so much for being here today. It was just so wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you, Gale. Thank you so much for having me here today and having this conversation with me.
Wow, I don't know about you, but I am so impressed with the way Lindsay handles her corporate position, her business, and her life in such a holistic way. Wouldn't you agree? Especially how she puts it, everything she does in her business, she does to scale, so it's the least amount of time for the most output. which she says is a skill that you can require because it helps you go further. Such wise words. I'm sure you'll agree with me. And what about how she builds systems into everything? You know, she does her content system, her email system, her presentation workbook templates she talked about, her spreadsheet of ideas, which I really love, and her batching method, and how she just lays everything out in her Google Drive. I was really impressed with her great advice on being intentional about what we do and why, and just not wasting our time doing all that busy work. But I think what I really loved most was her analogy of work-life balance, where she teaches the concept of tending your garden, where she talked about a relationship garden, your business garden, your children garden, your health garden, and what gardens are doing great and what gardens need digging into, and how she right now herself is tending to her own health garden. And you'll definitely want to listen to her Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast about what's really meaningful and just being at peace with ourselves. The link for that is below with all her other information. Now, I have a question for you today. If you were to create Lindsay's garden concept of work-life balance, right? Which garden would you need to tend and dig into today? Write it in the comments below. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I love doing it. I have more upcoming interviews coming your way in this series, so don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.